The Behind Ears podcast crew would definitely like to thank both Expedition Roasters as well as Kingdom Strollers for their continued support of bringing you the best in Disney podcasting. Thank you so much, you guys, for supporting the show. We really super appreciate it. And by all means, let's go ahead and get this rolling. To you live from our studios on the East Coast and in the Midwest. It's the Behind Ears podcast, because everybody does Disney differently. Greetings and salutations, my friends. I am your host tonight, Mr. Chris, and I'm kind of coming to you live with a little bit of a impromptu show. And the reason why I'm actually even doing this here and now on a Sunday evening is mainly because of the number of messages that I received on the side talking about the different events from this past weekend in regarding to the Skyliner. Now, here's the thing. I'm actually recording this live for our podcasting friends. And to be very honest, I expect this to be a little bit of a discussion. And I'm going to probably talk about a few different things, a few different thoughts. And I'm almost positive that Danny, when he joins me during one of the next shows, will also express some of his thoughts and feelings as well. I know that what we're probably going to talk about tonight is, what's the best way of putting it? It has definitely brought up a lot of different emotions and thoughts and feelings out there in the Disney community today. So the only thing I have to ask is this. Let's go into this conversation with an open mind, and let's actually talk about it. Let's actually have a discussion. Let's respect each other's thoughts and feelings about this. And dare I even say, listen to the whole thing. Because quite honestly, I know that some of us have some very distinct, strong feelings either way about what's been going on. And I think it would be good to hear the whole thing. Depending on the crowd tonight, we may even take a few calls in regards to your thoughts, feelings, and comments regarding this. Let me go ahead and hit up the comment section here really quick. I want to say hey to everybody and who has already posted a whole bunch of hellos. Thank you all for joining. So let's go ahead and get right down to it. So I've really wanted to do this for a while. So I'm going to hit this button this time. You know what that sound means? That's right. It's Behind the Ears Podcast News. All the news you can use from around Walt Disney World. It's been quite a while since I've actually been able to hit that button. So what could I tell you? So let's go ahead and start. So yesterday, Saturday, on the 5th of October, later in the evening, there was obviously an issue over at the Skyliner. And yeah, make a long story short, there was a couple Skyliner cars that kind of bumped into each other at the station, caused a ruckus, caused everything to basically come to a screaming halt for 3 hours. No matter how you look at it, that's what happened. Now, as for exactly how this happened, or in my business, as they refer to it as a root cause analysis, we don't know. I've heard a few things. I've seen a few things. I've read a few things. And quite honestly, those are things that obviously we don't know 100% for sure as to what they were. And quite honestly, I'm going to express a personal opinion here. I have read so much over the past 24 hours, so many different things, so many different in pieces of input, so many viewpoints. I don't really know what to believe anymore. That is the honest to goodness truth. I'm being super honest here. I honestly don't know what to believe and what not to believe. One thing's for sure. You have people that are stuck on Skyliners for several hours. Yeah, you know what? It's going to get nerve-wracking. You know what I kind of attested to? Sitting on a tarmac in an airplane for 3 hours because of some reason or another, and no one's telling you anything. You get frustrated. You don't know what to do. Eventually, you just You're kind of just at the mercy of whatever's happening. Okay. And I know some people might say, yeah, but Chris, you're not suspended 60 feet up in the air. No, yeah. I get it. You're right. I'm not necessarily making a direct parallel. I understand. Here's also one other thing. I kind of laugh a little bit at this, but here's the funny part, Karen. Karen says, but you can't go pee. Here's the funny part. You're stuck on the tarmac in an airplane. They don't allow you to get up out of your seat. At least they never did with any of the flights that I've been stuck on. And believe me, I've been stuck on my fair share. So saying that with just a little bit of humor. But here's the thing. I can only imagine that when it comes to the riders that were in this predicament, kind of fell into one of probably several different scenarios, because I don't think everybody was in a panic. In fact, there were reports as well as tweets, as well as pictures, as well as video of guests actually making the best of it. And I'm not saying that is what everybody should do and everybody should basically, sing zippity doo-dah while you're, suspended like that. That's not my point. I do know that some people got panicked. I understand that fully. I completely understand it. Whereas people especially are, in a small room for a short period of time, they could probably deal with it, but 3 hours would probably just, go nuts. There were probably people who were, in fact, I know there were people that were upset at the fact that they were underway to try to get somewhere dining wise. And by the time they got off, not only did they miss their dining reservation, but they were also hungry. And at that late at night, it's also really difficult to find something to eat around resorts. Let's face it. There's people that were saying that there was a lack of communication. Okay, I can understand that. And then again, I also tried to find someone to tell me, well, what kind of communication were you expecting? The reason why I even asked that type of question is because perception is reality, right? What is your perception of how Disney should have handled it? And, should they have said something over the PAs about ETA of what was going on? Hey, listen, I don't know. I don't know how they have this all how that was all set up. I think there are people there, both adults and kids, that probably, as Angie put it, would have lost their mind. I get it. You're absolutely right. At the same time, I do know, and it kind of goes along with what Karen mentions here about compensation. They did get off the gondolas. They did get compensated. I've heard a couple different things about how they were compensated. I'm not necessarily going to comment specifically what I read, only because there are conflicting reports. And I don't want to necessarily have it on record of me, anybody saying I'm giving out incorrect reports, but they were compensated quite nicely. But then again, it's also one of those cases where, does the compensation make up for it? Personally, I would have been very happy because, quite honestly, there are things that are outside of people's controls. The cast members that are basically controlling the transportation. Obviously, it's not their fault, or at least I'd like to. I'm gonna stick with that. I'm gonna say it's not their fault. The people that are working around the Skyliner. I highly, strongly doubt that they had anything to do with the issue. The thing of it is that I know people were obviously very upset when they finally got off. Some people were just relieved. Some people were like, hey, that was fun. Not everybody panicked. So the thing of it is that a few things come out of it. A few things I'm pretty sure are going to come out of this. One, I'm fairly positive that, obviously they're going to have to investigate what happened. Anytime a system like this breaks down, they're going to have to figure out why, especially something that is real new. They're going to have to figure out why. At the same time, it's not just about the breakdown. It's about how guests were communicated to, and of course, taken care of from, getting them out from a rescue perspective. And there are some people, especially you go out on Twitter and you take a look at it, and some of the comments range from Disney did a great job to, hey, this obviously needs some really big attention. And there's also people that are saying, you know what, I'll never ride this now. There are some people that say, hey, I'll still go ahead and ride it anyway. There are people that are still looking forward to their first ride. And, the thing of it is that I think there were so many people making comments about it that weren't involved, that, and so many different pieces of information out there. Social media, I think some people think it hurt, some people think it helped, because those that were stuck turned to social media for their information and insight. And unfortunately, I think it was social media that I think, at times, made fun of the situation to the point where it wasn't really very helpful. In fact, members of the admin team from the WDW community and I, we were talking about it in a relatively serious tone about, the significance of this particular item. And one of us mentioned something like, it's unfortunate this is going to become a t-shirt or a meme or something like that. And sure enough, probably within 30 minutes of someone making that comment, we found some of the first memes and t-shirt designs that popped up. It was, it was just one of those cases. But here's a great example. And Laura, I know you've been listening for a long time. You're saying that, you've read that they'll never open Skyliners again. And Cody basically also makes a comment saying back to you that there's no way that's true. The thing of it is, Laura, and I'm not pointing this out at you, but a comment like that, I find to be very hard to believe. And I realize it's not your comment. You're stating that someone made that comment. Again, it's social media, and that kind of stuff that people are posting. Again, I know it's not you, Laura. So if I said it like I was, if I sounded like I was kind of pointing the finger at you, I apologize. That's not the case. But, obviously it's going to be down for a little bit as they investigate. But if anybody thinks that this is going to cause a full-on failure of the Skyliner to the point where it's going to be mothballed, like only a week after it's been fully implemented, they really are misguided in that, because unless there is some serious engineering flaw in a design that is used in other places across the world, I don't see that happening. They're going to fix a problem and they're going to move on. And it's stuff like that, when people make comments like that in social media, that I think puts a big dent in things, and it's just not fair to Disney. Now, I'm not saying that is some sort of a, Disney could do no wrong attitude. That is certainly not the case. But as an engineer by trade, I think logically. And there's a lot of illogical types of things that have been said out there. And, it's just, I just don't think that, comments like that people make within social media helps the situation. And it certainly doesn't help those that may have been stuck up there. That's just my 2 cents. My take on it, I'm still going to write it. It's one of those cases where here's a great example. And I really hate to bring something like that. I bring this up for the sake of making a case in point in conversation. And of course, with all due respect to those who have been involved. But, Chris brings up the idea that, there was a tragic accident on the monorail within, the past number of years, with most of us have been around, know what that's like, and they're still running. Again, it was a tragic, horrible accident. And you know, this is interesting. Even Kevin made comments about, hey, how many problems did Walt have on opening day of Disneyland in 1955? Bathrooms quit working and they ran out of refreshments. I totally believe it. You know, the interesting part about it is that there have been people that have wanted the Skyliner to fail from the very beginning. And I don't know why. Just because, I mean, some people said they would never ride that kind of thing because they don't like that. And I get it. But why wish failure on a project like that? I can tell you that when Danny and I got to ride it, when we were out there a couple weeks ago, almost 2 weeks now, it was a very enjoyable experience. Very enjoyable. And it felt safe. It felt smooth. And a lot of you saw the videos of it, you know, because we live streamed a lot of that experience. Everything from takeoff to coming into the station, boarding, you know, boarding inside one of the carts, and also disembarking. You know, we showed a lot of it. You know, I just think that there have been a lot of people wanting the Skyliner to fail, and I don't understand why. I know there's been people saying things like, you know, that was the reason why they booked a trip at a particular resort hotel, because they're going to have the Skyliner. You know, the Skyliner to me is not necessarily an attraction like Space Mountain. You know, it's a mode of transportation, and those types of modes of transportations are going to have their times down for maintenance. They're going to have their times down for issues. And I'm not necessarily calling that. Obviously, this is something outside of that, but I wouldn't necessarily pick a resort hotel because of a specific mode of transportation. So the thing of it is that there are people who were saying that, you know, the sun went down. It was not hot in them for the most part. That's what people were saying, as well as some people were saying it was hot. Okay, which one is it? Which one is it? Was it hot? Was it not hot? That's the part of the funny part about it. They were all on the same line. So which was it? You know, I can't necessarily fathom how much different some of the reports were. I mean, you go out there and you'll take a look and you'll see for yourself. And it's really one of those things that just, in a way, it kind of drives me nuts, because, you know, how could people in the same situation have so many different versions of what happens? The part that really kind of gets me, and I made this comment privately, I'll go ahead and say it. Sandra says here, wonder how many lawsuits will be filed. Why? The only reason why I think, you know, I mean, because I'm sure if it's going to be filed because it was a very stressful time, and I get it. And that's not fair to people, but Disney compensated people. I'm not calling out anybody that has that was a part of this that had a lot of anxiety to it, because I get it. And for that, I have empathy. I just don't know if it's something that, you know, lawsuits should be filed. That's my 2 cents. And Carol, yeah, I was kind of thinking this. If people were feeling anxious, they probably felt hot because their perception was reality. You know, I get it. Alan makes a very good comment as a Floridian as well. He says, here in Florida, some people are hot at 70, some at 80, some at 90, some never feel hot. Yeah, it all depends on the person. Like, example, if you're from the north, I mean, to me, a nice 85-degree warm day is, you know, it's pretty toasty. I sweat at 85 degrees easily. Just, well, I'm also a big guy, so there. You know, obviously you start hyperventilating and stuff like that, you're going to feel warm. I get it. I say all this with respect. I don't see any of this, you know, I'm not a doctor. I don't play one on TV. You know, I understand. I really do. And, you know, the interesting thing is that it wasn't as hot as they really could be, at least not in this situation. I totally get it. So I will go ahead and put a number up. If you'd like to call and leave your, talk to me about your comment, I would certainly entertain that. So let's see. One of the things I would probably also say is, now everybody's armchair athleting things about, how in the world can things be made better? I think there's a lot of things that people are really going to try to look and see how things are set up. It's going to be interesting to see what kind of changes are going to come of this. Some changes are going to be strictly to get it back running again. Some changes are most likely going to be running changes, so to speak. Disney has done one thing they do really well with almost anything that's opened up. They make small changes. They see how the reactions happen on a wide scale, and they make changes. And that's probably one of those cases here and now. They'll make some changes. I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem with writing it, even with this sort of thing happening. I really don't. And I respect those that basically say no way now. I really do. I guess it's just one of those cases where, I've seen the pictures and everything, and I thought it could have been quite nerve-wracking. I probably would have made fun of it, only because I'm a humorous kind of guy, and when I get nervous, I actually crack more jokes, believe it or not. It's actually quite. I'm sure it bothers the snot out of a lot of people that I'm with at the time, but I do that. I totally get this. So, and Jess is asking, well, what if you had an annual pass? I don't know, Jess. I don't know if anything was said about that. So we'll have to kind of just wait and see until people actually talk about what happened with them at that time. And I kind of have to say, John's got a point. This is kind of human nature. Different views of the situation are totally compensation and lawsuit based. Some people are honest, and some people are going to take their chance to get the quick buck. And it's, unfortunately, I think we all know what's going to happen. I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of the week, something's not, by the end of the week, something doesn't happen like that. Charles basically makes the comment, I would have had fun during it. I probably would have too. But again, I sometimes do that when I get nervous. It's just one of those cases. And Kevin, you say, didn't look like operator error. I don't think so either. But, we don't know. We were not there. We don't necessarily know. It probably wasn't a cast member who was standing there making sure guests come on and off, etc. We don't know who's playing, who's playing certain roles in what background. We just don't know that. It's, as a guest, that's transparent to us, and that's okay. So we don't necessarily know. This is going to have to be, something that's going to be decided by a root cause, root cause analysis. In my business, we call it the 5 whys. You have to ask yourself, why did this happen 5 times? And I'm sure that is going to be for this particular situation. I'm sure the Skyliner is going to be down for, a period of time. How long? I don't know. Disney's not saying, and I would just let it be that way until such time as it's running. I'm sure that after they get it running again, they're probably going to have to do some testing again. These are the logic and reasonable type of answers that you can get. Nicole, I'm going to share this because this is pretty darn funny. Forgive me, my friend. She says, if I've been stuck on one, the other riders would need to sue to cover the cost of therapy after watching me pee into one of those throw-up bags. You, my friend, have just won the comment of the day award. That is for sure. Just asked, could I imagine if the admins of this group getting stuck in one together? Jess, I want you to think about that really quick. Me, you, Trish, Chris, Danny. Let's go ahead and throw your husband and your daughter in it at the same time. We would probably have a blast until such time as it would not be funny anymore. That is my take. Now my mouse just went out. Oh, there it goes. I can't get the comment off the screen. Yeah, this is going to be a part of history. This is going to be a part of Disney history. People are going to remember, hey, remember what happened early October of 2019? Yeah. So it's just one of those things. So let's see. Kevin, he said he'd get sued for singing It's a Small World. Oh, people were actually doing sing-alongs from what I understand, to try to pass the time. I could only imagine what it would have been like for anybody that would have heard that from the ground. Actually, it was one of the funniest lines I heard was there was somebody that yelled down to one of the pools of one of the resorts they went over past, basically said, "Throw up snacks." And they're like, and the people on the ground said, "We can't throw snacks up that high." Yeah, Danny would probably break a window to get out. I would video it. It would be one of those things. Oh, Charles says he'd be down for a free zip line ride. That would actually be pretty funny. John does think that it's being overblown. And the thing is, what's going to happen tomorrow? Right now, what kind of things are going to be said tomorrow? That's going to be the biggest question. Because now that it's a day out, people have been taken off the gondolas. No one's there. Things are getting worked on. Is this going to be an issue? Will this episode even matter a week from now? That is probably one of the best questions I've heard. That's probably what I would think. Is this even going to matter in a week from now? And so what kind of things are really going to be said? Is it going to be factual? Is it going to be opinion based? Is it going to be something that can't be proven? Is it going to be, truly factual? That's a good question. What is going to happen? What's going to happen with that? I don't know. I mean, if nothing else, me making comments like this by myself with a group of 50 people or so, if nothing else, it's done for context. It's done for historical purposes, because believe it or not, I even go back to older episodes about different things that happened, different news items, and go back and refer to, hey, what happened after that? And sometimes I just don't know if it's going to really matter. Tomorrow is going to be the next day without the gondolas there, without the Skyliner running. People are still going to take buses. People are still going to take monorails. People are still going to take watercraft. People are still going to take minivans. People are still going to use Lyft and Uber. In other words, things are going to continue to be normal. So that is just one of those things. That is just something I've been thinking about. I mean, because there's going to be a lot of armchair Imagineering come tomorrow. And I think every time something comes out from Disney, there's going to be a little bit of extra armchair Imagineering. And I don't necessarily think Disney is obligated to tell everybody exactly what happened. I just don't. We don't hear exactly what happens if something happens to any other form of transportation. This isn't going to be any different. Some people might think that Disney should be more transparent. About what? Again, this is just my opinion. I mean, how is it going to help anybody? All I want to know is that if something's fixed and if it's, not going to happen again. That is one of those things. we're talking, people in the chat are actually talking a little bit about, about if the monorails are going to be replaced. And we kind of know that the monorails, at least right now, are being refurbed. And there's 2 of them right now that have been nicely refurbed. And unfortunately, I didn't get to ride on one during our trip the other week, which is really kind of a bummer, because I really wanted to. So I think that's kind of cool. Now, the fact of the matter is that if you totally refurb something, then it's pretty much like taking the guts out, fixing, replacing, re-engineering, updating, putting it all back. And while the shell may look the same, it's the underneath that counts. And I know for a fact, as a person has rebuilt machines before, especially in my history of rebuilding vehicles, I know that it could look like the same on the outside, but underneath is something much more reliable. And, for the monorails and stuff, I'm sure they'll do that. For the Skyliner, it's obviously something happened. They're going to have to find out what it was, and they're going to make it better. So that's my 2 cents. The thing of it is and Chris makes this comment. He goes, I believe that it's not a huge malfunction, that they best to tell people what happened. It'd benefit them greatly if they did announce it. The problem of it is what are people going to do with that information? That's kind of a corporate thing to think about. Because if social media blows things out of proportion and they don't know any of the facts, can you only imagine what social media would do if they actually had something that was from a root cause analysis? That is something that is something I really think makes a difference. Because again, I think social media has really played a role in this type of incident. Not necessarily the most positive one either. And I'm not picking on anybody in general. I mean, just on Twitter was just massively filled with comments that a lot of them were actually, kind of derailing from what really happened. So that's just something to take into consideration. It's kind of a challenge, because I think we all want Disney to be a success in what they do, because it obviously brings us the vacation experiences that we want and we desire. But I also know that something like this could be a little nerve-wracking. I am not saying that, I'm not trying to say that, this is one of those things that just could be ignored. But what I can say is I do have the thought process that it's going to get fixed, and it's going to be fine. If I take my car to a mechanic and I say, hey, listen, my brakes are dead, and I go to the mechanic and I barely make it to the shop because I'm sliding through the intersections because my brakes aren't good, and I get back into that car after the repair has been made, I've got to have faith that the first time I press on those brakes, it's going to work. Now, granted, I have to, what's that phrase? I've been using this phrase a lot lately from the movie Entrapment. Sean Connery, Catherine Zeta-Jones. Love the movie. Great movie from late 1990s. The phrase trust but verify. So I trust that Disney is going to get things taken care of. I trust that they are going to work with the vendor that built this system with them in dealing with the issues at hand. And I'd be more than happy to verify it by putting my butt inside one of those gondolas and taking it for a spin. I don't have any issue with that. So I understand, but it's one of those cases. So let me go ahead. I'm gonna post up a few things here. Let's see. Austin makes a comment. I think it depends on how detailed the root cause analysis is. If it's vague, people can take it all sorts of directions. And that's the thing. Most RCAs are usually not done vaguely. They're designed to not be vague. That's the thing. I have done my fair share of these types of documents, trust me. And generally speaking, they, if the people who are reviewing them do their job, it's not going to be vague. It's just, I'm not saying that the public is going to actually hear that. Gianna mentions, after getting stuck in a monorail for 40 minutes in the front and seeing how the conductor reacted, I'll not be going on them either. I would go, then stalled so much they shut it down. Back on when it went backwards, when they had him drive it offline, I was panicking because we were almost over the water at Disneyland. Never again. I'll walk. Well, the interesting part about the Disneyland monorail and the one that we have at Walt Disney World is that they are two different types of monorails. And I haven't, maybe it's because we mainly focus on Walt Disney World, but I really haven't seen anything like that at Disneyland happen in quite some time. Let's see. Chris says, I believe it would add a sense of security. To me, them telling us how it's safe now isn't good enough to satisfy everyone's needs. It doesn't bother me, but others with anxiety getting stuck would. Remember, they told us that these were so safe before, and then that happened last night. If it was just a small failure, I think it would give people a sense of safety that they may not feel as much now. It's a good point, Chris. It really is. Again, I just think that the social media aspect would take any little bit of information and go crazy with it. At the same time, I would bet that lawyers would go crazy with it too. So there's the flip side and probably why they wouldn't necessarily do that. But I don't necessarily disagree with your thought process. I really don't. Let's see. I'm going to flip through here. And Chris also wanted to continue by saying, with that being said, I doubt that it'll open back up without it being cleared safe from the proper authorities. And I have to agree that. Hold on one second here. Someone's actually calling. It says it's going to voicemail, but I have it set to actually go. Give me one quick second. I apologize. Well, wait a second. All right. Mary, please tell him to hold off. Give me 1 second. I have to change something. I think I see why now. It's not coming in. Oh, wait. Hello, you are on the air. Oh, I must have accidentally hit the button. Give me 1 second because I think I know what's going on. The joys of basically making this happen. Let me test this. Okay, that's working. And it's working. So Mary, if you'd like to have him give me a call again, I'd be more happy to answer that call now that I can actually hear it coming through. So yeah, I mean, I have to agree with a lot of those comments that actually came through in a sense of, I believe it's going to have to be cleared as safe, or else they're not going to have it run. Alan, I love this. Thanks a lot. He goes, trust but verify. It goes back to Reagan speaking to Gorbachev more than a decade before the movie Entrapment. Oh man, thanks for the history there, Alan. That's pretty funny. Let's see here. I'm flipping through some of the comments. These are great. Gianna's like, okay, I'll only ride them at Walt Disney World. Excellent. Austin makes a comment. It's all just speculation right now. I'd like to have a statement from Disney, but I guess I understand a lack of clarification from at this point. Especially at this point, I don't think they have anything to be able to give us. If you really want to know the honest to goodness truth, I just don't think they have anything else to tell us about that. So let's go ahead and take this call really quick. Hi, this is Chris, and you're on the air.
Hey, Mr. Chris, it's Steve.
Hey, Steve, how you doing? I hope you're enjoying your time out there.
We're actually back last night.
Oh, you were? Oh, that's a bummer. I thought you were actually out there for a little bit longer.
We were going to try to ride the Skyliners yesterday because we only got to ride them once. So we were going to try to ride them, but we just couldn't fit it into our schedule. And then we got home and heard what happened.
Yeah. Well, you know, maybe your timing, I guess you could say, was better than expected. But well, I hope you had an absolutely fabulous time out there. I saw some of the pictures and it looked like it. So.
Oh, the weather was great. There was one rain shower this time when we were out. It lasted like 5 minutes. We usually get rain every day, so it was awesome weather this time. So,
well, that's great. I'm glad to hear it. So what can I do for you tonight?
Well, one account, and it's just an account, but Mary read to me online last night that someone that worked on a Skyliner system in another city thinks it may have been one of the ADA rides, Skyliner cars that was sent out and got in the mix too early or something like that, because they're supposed to wait 95 seconds to load and let that car go back out into the mix. So maybe they're saying they think something happened with that.
Huh. That's kind of an interesting theory. And I only say theory only because, until we all really find out. That's kind of interesting because for those that don't know, and obviously, Steve, you saw this as well, if you've ridden it, anytime they have one of the ADA compliant cars, and most of them are able to accept a scooter, but what they end up doing is kind of, when it comes in, it'll kind of chug, and then it'll go like along a slightly longer path to a special loading zone for those with scooters or wheelchairs. And the people in scooters and wheelchairs supposedly don't even have to get up out of their scooters or wheelchairs. And then
no, Mary had a scooter. She did not. She just drove right on. And then you have the option to get out of the scooter once you're on, or stay in the scooter. It's your option.
Okay, good. And so basically after that, after a little bit, then it kind of just goes back into the mix.
They said it takes 95 seconds. They're supposed to wait 95 seconds to load up. And even if you're done in 30, it's still supposed to take 95 seconds for the whole process. And we were trying to look to see if the cars were numbered a certain way. But since we were sitting there, we were talking to a cast member, and the ADA cars actually have a red nozzle at the top to identify them that they're supposed to go off to the side for ADA.
Okay. Now, I didn't necessarily catch that when I was there, even though they did have cars aside for ADA loading and unloading. That's very interesting to hear. And if the theory is I'll say is true, I'm using it all as speculation.
It's just a person that says they worked on a Skyliner in another city, and it's their account. That's what I'm saying. It's
very interesting. That's actually a really interesting comment there from whom you heard that from. So it almost, gosh. Then of course people are going to start wondering: is it user error? Is it operator error? Is it was there a load error of sorts? Obviously something happened in order to have this get kind of clumped up. And actually, the way that you described that, I can almost see that happening in my mind's eye. Now, I'm no expert, but I can see where that might happen if something just didn't go quite as expected.
Right. If the timing was off by a second or two, or, I'm no expert either. That was one account that I found interesting, that the person said they did work on a Skyliner system in another city, and that was their thinking.
That's an interesting thought. I really appreciate you coming on the air tonight and sharing that with us. I mean, that's a very interesting concept, and I'm sure that if that is one of the cases, I'm hoping. You know what? I'm hoping that's it. I'm hoping that it's something that simple and not something like a huge design flaw. I'm hoping that it was just something that, something operational got messed up in the process, and then that happened. But thank goodness nobody was injured in the process, and that type of thing.
Well, that was that was just what we saw last night, and then the knowledge of the, if the red nozzles are the ADA cars, it's not a car number or anything like that. That's the red on top tells them it's an ADA car.
I'm going to have to look into that. I mean, I'm going to have to try to see if I can look through my pictures, because I took a lot of pictures. I still haven't gone through all of them. I'll have to take a look, because I'd be kind of like, I could go and say, wow, Steve told me about that. That's actually really cool. So,
well, you have a good evening, and we'll look forward to hearing you and Danny Tuesday and Thursday.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot for your call, my friend. I'm glad you made it home safe, and I can't wait to hear more about your trip later.
Yep, we'll get together on a show soon.
Sounds like a plan. Have a great one.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. I really appreciate that comment from Steve, because I mean, it kind of goes to show that there's probably more to this than we know. And even though what was just said, everybody needs to take it at face value and not as us playing blame game or anything else like that. It's just very interesting to hear information from what Steve heard from somebody else. That's a very interesting concept. Let's see here. I'm going to go in through some of the other comments here. Yes, the manufacturer of the company that mainly builds the Skyliner, they were there immediately after. And let's see. I'm going to go ahead and put this up here. What Lisa says, she says, unfortunately, I'm already seeing the trickle-down effect on social media. One pair blasted Disney for almost 20 minutes because a couple with two kids watching the Grand Floridian declared they missed their dinner reservation due to being stuck in the gondola for 2.5 hours, allegedly, and the concierge and the Grand told them the market was closed. So not only is Disney dealing with the incident itself, but the reactions of the guests and their interactions with the resorts and cast members after the fact. Lisa, I actually saw that same video. And, it's kind of interesting. I like to consider myself friendly with those that actually did that video. And, they're trying to account for their interactions with that guest and what they saw firsthand. It's kind of a tough call, because first off, I thought it was at the yacht club, but I could be mistaken. It's kind of interesting, because I'm pretty sure that system-wide, people outside of what happened probably were not notified as to the extra circumstances that surrounded a lot of guests and their issues. In essence, they were probably unprepared as to what they could or didn't do, as the case may be. I thought that the account from Ryan and Stacy was very interesting, to be honest with you. And I believe that's whom you've heard that from. And I say interesting because it's like, this is definitely a trickle down. Again, you probably have people that were at different resorts that had no idea what was going on, because, they were doing their job. And it's not like people that are working at the different resorts. I wouldn't expect them to be notified of, hey, we've got some problems. We need to spread some magic on some of these extra guests. I don't know. And I only say I don't know, not towards the video, because obviously they're expressing what they witnessed directly, which, I believe was a good account. So, yeah, there's going to probably be some fallout, some guest satisfaction. That's going to be an issue with that. And hopefully Disney will be able to, get that resolved. That's more than just, gift cards and park hopper tickets, as well as I know that I saw pictures of water being passed out to people as they got off, etc. I'm sure there were probably some issues surrounding a lot of that. So, think they may have to change some of the process. I don't know. Hopefully, if they change the process, it'll never happen again, or it'll be so infrequent, of a stop like that. It'll be like, oh, we haven't done anything like that in years. So we'll have to see how that goes. So, but I don't necessarily think something like that is, I don't necessarily think anything like that. It's really entitlement. I think it's problem solving. Of course, when you're upset, it's kind of hard to do logical problem solving when you're tired and hungry and you've missed some things and part of your vacation and things like that. It's really hard to keep your cool. And even I myself, as someone who does that a lot, and I mean, having to deal with conflict resolution, that would be a real challenge, especially after being stuck like that. Especially if I get hangry, I'll be honest with you. And I can only imagine what that would have been like. So let's see. Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it was the yacht club. Okay. Good. It was one of those things where people, what's the best way of putting this? If you're compensated for a problem, yeah, it's probably not going to help the fact that you're hungry. Especially if you have little kids. I get it. I certainly wouldn't yell at a poor cast member that probably doesn't have the authority to do that. I would kindly ask for a supervisor to find out what some options are and so on and so forth. I mean, I don't know. I wasn't there. I wasn't. But we'll have, I'm sure that some of the things are going to probably come up in social media over the next few days. The problem of it is I think that as we get further and further away from this, I think the recount from social media is going to be less and less accurate. That's just my 2 cents. Because now all of a sudden, you're going off of memory. Me, I really would like to try to find someone who actually was stuck on the Skyliner so I could talk to them a little bit about it. I really would, because I'd really like to hear a first account of it, firsthand account of it. And I kind of have to agree with this. If people were compensated getting off, I don't understand why the frustration carried on to others. It's one of those cases where it's like, I understand there's a point where you can be compensated for your delay and for your problem. The problem of it is that at that late at night, there are places where you can't necessarily get something to eat very easily. So you kind of have to ask around and kind of figure it out. I don't know what restaurants in the area close past 11 or let's see, it's the yacht club area. So you have like ESPN, you have Big River, you have a few other places. So I don't know. I do feel like example, I do agree like with what Austin says. I do feel frustration for those guests. I'm not going to say they probably could have been treated better. I'm going to say they probably could have been treated differently. What I mean by differently is obviously they were probably treated well. However, it may not have solved their problem right then and there. That's when I think some of the extra magic needs to come out. But you know what? Again, I'm accidentally playing Armchair Imagineer, and I really shouldn't. So we'll just kind of have to play it by ear from this point forward. It's one of those, it is just one of those cases. I think it's kind of funny. Chris said, if I were stuck last night, you all had to go through a 3-hour live stream with me on board. But Chris, how colorful would the metaphors have been for 3 hours? So, and Karen, I agree with this. If something is good, you tell 5 people. If it's bad, you tell 20. Even after being compensated, they were still irritated. Maybe I certainly agree with that. You ever notice that like good news, it takes so much effort to get good news out there, but yet if someone ticks you off or something like that, it goes out like wildfire. That's how hard. If you think, case in point, you ever try to get people to, try to get people to help pass along some good news because, someone wants to give something away or something like that, and it's hard to get people to celebrate good stuff, but man, everybody wants to jump in if they hear, stuff like that. It's just really hard. It's really hard, but I totally get it. Yeah, Austin's like, oh, we're all playing Armchair Imagineer right now. Yeah, we all kind of are. You know, I try to avoid it as much as possible, unless we do have a specific Armchair Imagineering episode, which has been some of our most fun episodes that we've had. So yeah, so we'll just have to leave it at that. Oh, Chris does say we may need to have had a beep button by hour 2. Yeah, I could see that. Alan, okay, you're saying WFTV Channel 9 had a reporter stuck on board. She had a video report on the station and more on Twitter. Oof. I had to try to figure out who that might be. That's actually quite interesting. You know, yeah, Christopher says, you know, conspiracy theories are running wild. Kevin even says bad news is still being spread about Galaxy's Edge. Don't get me started on that one, my friend, because I actually plan on doing something of a separate episode on just that, and probably after we talk about Galaxy's Edge coming up on this Tuesday's episode. And don't forget, I also say this Tuesday, I really need to be careful how I say that, because this episode is going to be released before the other episodes that we've already done, because I think this is interesting news to put out there. All right. So that's about what I'm going to mention for right now. And you know what? I really do appreciate everybody's comments, thoughts on this. I guess it's like this. If I could summarize it like this, it would be like this. What happened last night was an obvious mishap. It was one of significance. It wasn't something trivial. There were a lot of people that were impacted. Each one of them probably dealt with it in their own way. I'm very thankful for the people that helped tend to those guests that were stuck in the gondolas, either by rescuing them from, you know, via the Reedy Creek Fire Department, or by eventually being able to leave naturally off of the gondola cars itself. I know that it was probably a very trying time for most, if not all. And again, I know that a lot of people coped with the issue in different ways. I know there are people that are going to never want to ride the gondolas ever again, or even ever for the first time. And then there are people that are going to be like, bring it on. Let's have some fun. I know that I have confidence that Disney is going to look into this from every aspect and every system that was in place, whether it be from rescue or operations, making sure that this doesn't happen again. I have a lot of confidence in that. And I'm not just saying that because I know that if I were in their shoes, I would make sure that it never happened again. I, for one, am going to make a pledge that I try to stay away from the armchair imagineering. I'm going to try to go off of facts. I'm going to, you know, if I speculate, I'm going to state it as such. But I want to try to make sure that if I'm going to add anything to the aspect of social media, it is with facts, it is with positivity, and it's, you know, obviously calling out issues where there are issues. But you can do that in a way that I can basically say that something went wrong without making it a social media splat, so to speak. So that's just my 2 cents. I like to deal in facts. And if something is wrong, I'm going to say it's wrong. If something goes right, I'm going to say it's right. Obviously, in this case, something went wrong. And you know what? I'm sure there were a lot of different things that different cast members were not ready for. And I'm very confident that they will be ready for anything else that happens this time around. I hope you guys understand where I'm coming from. I'm more than willing to discuss with anybody on the side, any additional thoughts and feelings. But as I said, this is not going to be a failure for the Skyliner. This is going to be an improvement point for the Skyliner. The processes involved, the cast members involved, and of course the cast members surrounding those areas. All right, my friends, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and let you go. I'm going to hit this button here. Take a listen. You heard the show, and we hope you want more. Well, feel free to join us over at our social media platforms. Instagram and our Facebook page can be found at Behind the Ears Podcast. Our webpage is behindtheearspodcast.net, and our email is behindtheearspodcast@gmail.com. And our Twitter handle is @BehindTheEarsPC. And come and join the conversation about all things Disney over at the WDW community page. Don't forget to rate and review the show over at iTunes or Apple Podcasts, as it really helps us get the word out about the show. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the show on iTunes or Apple Podcasts or the Podbean app. Also, you can listen to us on Stitcher Radio, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, and via Alexa and Google Home. All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining this impromptu recording session to talk about some breaking news in regards to the Disney Skyliner system. Again, if you have any questions, comments, or just wish to continue this conversation with me, I'd love to hear it. We'd love to hear from our listeners. BehindTheEarsPodcast@gmail.com is really where you need to get a hold of me. You can also contact me over at the Behind the Ears Podcast Facebook page. Listen, everybody, thanks a lot for joining. Thanks a lot for the great conversation. You guys are all awesome, and I can't wait to talk to you more come this Tuesday. So until we meet again, I hope everybody has a magical day. Take care.